Hey all, so today we're going to be looking at B2.3, which is cell specialization. A lot of this stuff we will have already seen or will be integrated into other chapters, but we just want to make sure that we have a video that covers everything. So we're looking at the roles of stem cells in multicellular organisms, and we're looking at how differentiated cells adapt to their specialized function. So first we have to understand what a stem cell is. When fertilization happens, an embryo grows through mitosis, and those cells in the body have not yet differentiated into specialized cells. Those are stem cells, these undifferentiated cells. So they can become any kind of cell, and they're activated based on the position in the embryo as it is growing into a bigger and bigger ball of cells. Differentiation occurs by expressing specific genes and allows cells to be more efficient. So all of your cells in your body have all of your DNA, but that doesn't mean all of your genes are being expressed. They're not all activated. They're not all turned on. And so as a result, your skin cells function differently than your eyeball cells do, and differently than your liver cells do. And that's because different genes are being expressed in each of those types of cells. Those cells are differentiated. Some cells, like liver, skin, testes, and bone marrow, continue to have stem cells present throughout your whole life, and that's going to allow regeneration and repair. Some cells, like cardiac cells or brain cells, do not have stem cells, and they cannot grow back. A niche for your stem cells is the location that it lives in, that when triggered by a microenvironment messenger, allows those stem cells to become activated and to repair that tissue. So a good example of this is skeletal muscle. There are satellite cells in your skeletal muscle, and they help repair damaged muscle. So this is what happens actually when you lift weights and then your legs feel sore the next day. The satellite cells have become activated because you've ripped up the muscle tissue, and they are repairing the muscle tissue. If you don't lift heavy weights, over time as you age, you start to lose muscle mass, and your stem cells become less active because you're just not using them for a prolonged period of time in your life. So this is my plug to say, I highly recommend going to the gym and lifting heavy things, and it will keep your body mobile and functional well into old age. So therapy with stem cells, there's a few different types of stem cells. There's totipotent ones, which can become any kind of cell, liver, skin, placenta, whatever, and they could be used to grow organs. So if you wanted a tailor-made heart, that could be generated with totipotent stem cells. Pluripotent stem cells can become almost anything, but just not placental cells. These are often used for scientific research, and they are what is generated by a fertilized egg that then is growing into a small ball of cells. In most countries, the regulations related to scientific research using pluripotent stem cells are that those cells need to be used within 2 weeks of fertilization, so they can be cultured for up to 2 weeks. Multipotent stem cells, some range of cells such as hematopoietic cells in bone marrow that become blood cells. So with these ones, that means it says here donors can be used. So what that's meaning is your stem cells in your bone marrow produce more red blood cells or hematopoietic cells. And so if you needed a bone marrow transplant, you would get bone marrow from a different donor from their stem cells so that you could generate these hematopoietic cells. So when you have leukemia, for example, bone marrow starts producing cancerous mutated white blood cells that don't work properly. The treatment there is to kill the white blood cells with chemo, and then to give the patient a bone marrow transplant from a donor that has the same blood type as them. So different cells are specialized in different ways. So for example, sperms and eggs. Sperms have very small volumes and for effective swimming. And they also have a tail that allows them to swim. They have a lot of mitochondria, so they have the energy for swimming. And then they also have an acrosome, which is the top of the sperm that actually creates enzymes that will digest into the egg. And the egg has large volume, which allows for food reserves in the cytoplasm for the growing cells to use. Also, it has something called cortical granules, and these will produce proteins that would seal up the zona pellucida, which is on the outside part of the egg, and that would prevent multiple sperms from getting inside. They also have a lot of mitochondria. Red blood cells have wide diameters but narrow width, and this allows them to travel well, but also gives them a high surface area to volume ratio for picking up oxygen and dropping it off. White blood cells are small when they're inactive, but triple in size, filling with rough endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi bodies for making antibodies and proteins when they become activated. Motor neurons have a big cell body and they make many proteins, and that is to allow them to create proteins for their long axons that are the signaling pathway for our nerves. Cerebellar granule cells, those are cells in our brain. Those are neurons in our brain. They have very, very small volumes so that there can be many of them and allow a lot of signaling. And then striated muscle fibers, which we talked about in the last slide, but these have large diameter and length, so they can contract forcibly. And then there's similar, it's called cardiac muscle cells in your heart. Cardiac cells have intercalated discs. So the cells themselves are shorter and they have like this disc in between the cells that allows signaling to happen really quickly so that all of the heart cells are contracting at the same time. So some cells, and in the case of my class, we've already looked at kidneys, so we kind of already know this, but lots of cells have different surface to area volume ratio adaptations. And so we can see here on the right, a nephron has high surface area to volume ratio for reabsorption of minerals, nutrients, vitamins, and water. And surface area to volume ratio is important to accommodate for cells to be able to bring in sufficient nutrients and remove sufficient waste. As they get bigger, they have less area for this process to take place. It's also important for heat loss. If the cell is, this should say, too big, it might not have enough surface area to lose heat effectively. And so we can think of this like an elephant. An elephant is very big, and therefore it needs special structures like its ears so that it can properly lose heat effectively. Many cells have adaptations to maximize surface area to volume ratio. So for example, red blood cells, they have a biconcave disc shape that reduces their volume and reduces distance to the membrane, and it helps them pick up and drop off oxygen. And then proximal convoluted tubule here, that's in the kidney. Part of the kidney, it receives high amounts of fluid and it requires a lot of it to be reabsorbed. So that area is only one cell thick, and it has microvilli, which are little projections on the inside of the proximal convoluted tubule. And it also has nearby capillaries and many protein pumps and channel proteins. In this case here, this would be on the inside edge of your intestines as well. They would have villi, and then on the villi, microvilli. And so that would allow there to be a high surface area. Additionally, high surface area occurs in your alveolar cells as well. So to summarize, stem cells are undifferentiated, but differentiate as the embryo grows based on the positioning of those cells. They can be used, stem cells can be, to treat diseases, for example, leukemia, and potentially to grow new tissues. So some of the new tissues, for example, multipotent tissues, could also be used so you could harvest like muscle cell from a cow and grow that in a vat. And then maybe we would never need to raise more cows. So they could be used for other things other than just treating diseases as well. There are some ethical considerations related to the stem cells from embryos, and many countries have clear guidelines on how those stem cells are used in a scientific context. And then size is a factor on how cells are specialized. So a variety of cells maximize surface area to volume ratio or have specialized structure that assist with the function of that cellular job. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching.